You mentioned single family homes was a great place to start, and you did a lot of research when it comes to that.
Mhm.
It, I guess rather than ask you a yes or no question, what kind of investment would you tell people based on your own experience is the best place to start, or is it different for everybody?
It's a little different for everybody, but I think single family homes are, if you ask me, just said, hey, you can only give me one answer. Where's the best place for somebody to get started? It is a small single family home,
Okay.
um, because it's what people are typically most familiar with. Um, you have you have a tenant who's paying their own utility bills, who's generally taking care of the yard on their own, and you're typically just dealing with one tenant. When you go into the small multifamilies, the duplexes, the triplexes, the quadplexes, forget going into larger apartment buildings, but just kind of that 2, 3, and 4 unit, you're dealing with multiple tenants. You know, who's paying on time, who's not paying on time, keeping all of that straight. Many of these smaller buildings, the owner is responsible for at least the water of the building, if not the electricity as well. And so you're trying to bake that into the rent, but not knowing exactly where that's going to come from. And then if the tenants aren't paying their own utilities, they are far less cognizant of how much they're using. Showers get longer, lights get left on, all of that kind of
Hmm.
stuff. Um, and if you've got, let's say, a triplex that you're working on, instead of a single family home where you have one furnace, one water heater, one air conditioner, all of a sudden you're dealing with three furnaces, three water heaters, three air conditioners. And Murphy's law says that if one's going out there two or three of them are coming, and those are big expenses that you have to come through. So I think if somebody is just getting started, a small single family home is a great place to get going.
Okay, cool. Now people are wondering at the same time, okay, well, when do I know that now is the time to begin looking for a property and pull the trigger on a property? Like you yourself, you were working at a corporate job, right? You bought the
Mhm.
duplex, you were living in the duplex at the same time, which, obviously we know this, but for someone listening, that means you're paying half the rent, the other person's paying it, but the other person probably covered most of the rent for the building in the first place. So your rent was probably pretty low at that time when you were living in.
House hacking is what they call it if you're living in one side and renting out the other. Yeah, and you're right. It's the other side is paying a good chunk of the mortgage for you, and so you're living there for next to nothing. And so it's less of a cash flow play at that point and more of an appreciation play
Yeah,
until you get to a point to where you can move out and you can rent the other side, and then that's where the cash flow really starts building
gotcha.
up.
Is there a certain place someone should be financially in order to make the decision to begin investing in real estate in terms of, okay, well, you had a 401k, how much should you have in reserves? Like, when would you recommend, obviously it's all different for each person, but I'm sure that
Sure.
there's a general practice. What would you recommend to people?
Well, I mean, you want to make sure that you're talking to a trusted lender, unless you're at a spot where you can pay cash for houses. There's different philosophies of investing. There's those, kind of on that Dave Ramsey camp of you pay cash for everything. You don't want to have any debt. And then you've got the Robert Kiyosaki's, Rich Dad Poor Dad, who you finance and leverage every possible thing that you can. And then most of us fall kind of somewhere in the middle. But if you're not at a spot where you can pay cash, you need to make sure that you're talking to a lender to figure out, okay, can I even get approved for a loan? Do I have enough for a down payment? What does that look like? And then realizing, okay, well, I've got enough for the down payment, and then I need to have a couple months of that mortgage payment set aside. Um, Again, in case it takes 2 months to find a tenant, or you do need an air conditioner, a water heater, a furnace, something like that. You just want to make sure that you're not stretching yourself too thin. However, real estate is something that historically over time, even with the few little minor dips that we've had, um, has gone up significantly over time. So it's like the same thing of when's the best time to plant a tree. Well, 50 years ago. When's the next best time? it's only going to get more expensive over time. So you can take as much advantage of that appreciation as you can by getting in earlier. But again, you just want to make sure that you're not putting every last dime or dollar that you have into buying these properties.